offices of the Electricity Company of Ghana. You'd recall a few weeks or about a month or two ago, the current Minister for Energy and Green Transition, Samuel Jinapor, John Jinapor, I should say, gave indications that some containers were missing at the Tema port. Well, as of last night, a new updated information from the office of the Energy Minister and the Electricity Company of Ghana indicate that all these containers plus more were found or have been found at different locations. So let me just bring you some specific details. So former Managing Director of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Samuel Dubik Mahama, has been invited by National Security and had his caution statement taken as investigations continue into the discovery of some 2,637 unaccounted for containers consigned to ECG at the Tema port. Some ECG staff have also been asked to step aside to allow for an unfettered investigation into how the containers, originally reported to be 1,300, remained unaccounted for and accumulated significant demurrage costs. The containers, according to a multi-agency investigative committee comprising the National Security, the Ministry of Transport, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, and Customs, were found across various port terminals, including the Meridian Port Services and the Ghana Ports and Harbours Terminal. The probe was triggered by inconsistencies in ECG's procurement and port clearance process, where items were consigned directly to the company without arrangement for timely clearance. The Attorney General's office is also expected to provide legal guidance on the next steps to be taken. Let me take you through the information that we got as regards where the containers were found. So the Meridian Port Services alone had about 860 of containers that were assigned to ECG, or ECG's containers had arrived in the country, and 860 of those containers were at the Meridian Port Services terminal. Again, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority terminal had 1,237 of the containers. Then you look at the ones that had already been evacuated by National Security. Those that had been taken out of these ports by the National Security in themselves were about 272. At the Amaris terminal, 194 of the containers that were seen there were those that belonged to ECG, and then 20 were seen at Atlas Manufacturing Terminal. And all of these, if you put them together, the number we are getting per the ECG report is 2,637, as against the earlier report of 1,300 containers that we were told had been misplaced or, using the word of the minister, missing. But from all indications, earlier interviews we had with Samuel Dubik Mahama indicated he was of a strong opinion that the containers were not missing because they were not small devices like phones that could simply just disappear into thin air. He was of the opinion that they probably have just been placed at different ports. So if you go to a particular area and you do not find it, it does not mean that those containers are missing. So based on the back of that, a committee was put together, and then they searched various port terminals and came out with the numbers that we have now: 860 at Meridian Port Services, 1,237 at the Gapoha Terminal, 272 already evacuated by National Security, 194 at the Amaris Terminal, and 20 of them at Atlas Manufacturing Terminal. So it simply raises the concern or the issue: what was contained in the report that the Energy Minister received, for which reason he came to say the containers were missing? And he put together a committee to investigate. The committee came back to confirm the fact that the containers could not be found. But a second committee that was put together that comprised, like I indicated, the Ministry of Transport, Gapoha, Customs, and National Security, they also undertook further search, and on the back of that, found over 2,600 of these containers at different port areas. So that is why the minority, for instance, is raising concern about why they believe the minister needs to come and answer a few more questions. So the spokesperson and head of communications for the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, Richmond Roxon, has also been speaking on this particular issue and provided some answers as to how these containers were retrieved. He spoke earlier to Beatrice Edu.
You will recall that the previous administration informed the current administration that ECG had 3,000 containers that were uncleared at the port. Of the assumption by this administration and the swearing in Minister for Energy and Green Transition, the minister had briefings. The briefing he had was contrary to information that had been given earlier. As a matter of concern, the minister caused an investigation into the matter. You will recall that the committee's report, the initial committee's report, was that he had identified over 1,100 containers, but 1,300 of these containers were not accounted for. They had gone there to do the physical inspection. They didn't find it. This triggered an interagency committee comprised of National Security, Ministry of Transport, the Ghana Ports Authority, GRA, and Ministry of Energy. Fortunately, through the work that has been done, 2,637 containers have been traced, and currently there's 2,583 containers in possession of the National Security, which are currently at the port.
That's almost half of what was initially retrieved or identified, as it were. How does the ministry how do you take this new revelation coming through?
You know, this goes a long way to confirm the poor procurement practices and data keeping of the previous administration under the ECG. Because as of now, if you give data that you have 3,000 containers, and eventually there's a contrary information that you have 2,005, and then you cannot even produce data to back exactly what you have, then it's difficult. There are facts among the containers that have been retrieved. There are some that some containers that have been retrieved, but there were no data supporting these containers. And there were some containers that have not been retrieved, but data shows that they should be available. And that is why this investigative committee's work is very important and crucial, and that they will continue because the suspicion is that there will be more containers out there, and that once the investigations continue, be able to retrieve more.
Do we know how long they are supposed to continue with its work? Until when?
In fact, as long as it will take, because it's been some time now. If the work of the committee can bring 2,600 at this point, there's absolutely nothing that should stop the committee. The objective is to recover every container that is out there, and number two, to deal with the procurement issues and punish any individual or institution that is involved in this. It's not that the matter has been left to go, no. The matter has been referred to the Attorney General for advice. The investigative bodies are still looking at it. The former managing director of ECG statement has been invited by National Security. His cautionary statement has been taken. Some staff of ECG have been asked to step aside pending investigation. So until the last container is retrieved, until people are punished for these acts, these investigations will continue.
And you heard the voice of Richmond Roxon, who is the spokesperson and head of communications for the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. Right, now let's try and get some clarity on how all of this plays out in the domain of Ghana's power sector. Nana Amoisi VII is the executive director of the Institute for Energy Security. Nana, good evening. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Thanks for having me, Martin, and good evening to your listeners.
Right. Do you have an understanding of the explanation that we have been given so far concerning how 1,000 and over containers were said to have been missed, and then those that have been retrieved are way past the number that we were told?
Well, I think that Richmond was trying to provide some clarity on the matter. The indication we take was that during the transition, it was reported that ECG has about 3,000 containers at the port. Then, when the minister took over, he equally got indication that they have at the port about 2,500 containers. And so the disparity between what was conveyed during the transit period and when he took office is what caused him to proceed with an investigation. And during the investigation, as we pick from the ministry, about 1,100 plus containers were identified out of the 2,500 that the minister was looking for. And about 3,300 could not be accounted for. And that's what came out into the public domain. And so today, if we are getting close to 2,600 of containers being accounted for, then it goes close to what ECG declared to the minister, but a little above that. Apart from that, during the search, some containers were found with an Indian company and other places. It means that between the 2,500 declared by ECG and the 3,000 that was declared during transit period, is what we are finding as extra. And so we believe that there could be more in the system that has not been accounted for. And so the search continue.
Right. From all indications, this is quite a major turning point when it has to do with ECG's procurement strategy. The minister has asked that ECG halt all forms of procurement, in line with these types of things that come in container shipments. Is that the way to go, you believe?
Well, when you're doing something that tends to be wrong, the common sense approach is to stop and check again if the direction is confirmed right or wrong. Then you take a new direction. And so halting the procurement process is good, because we get indication that there are some type of cables that have been bought so much that it could last for even more than 10 years. And some of these cables have lifespan. And so you only want to procure when you need them, and not so much that burden the taxpayer, and may go to turn out to be useless at a point. And so we must take a break and look at the whole procurement process, redefine it, retune it, and ensure that due diligence is done through the process so we have value for money.
And finally, we also have been told that probably the interference of political class could be blamed for some of these discrepancies. So, for instance, they are asking maybe an independent state institution must undertake the overhauling, the investigation, and the entire process. Is that a position you share, or because there is a political class that plays a critical role in the day-to-day running of the critical power sector player like ECG, we really cannot do without the political players in this particular issue?
Well, if we choose to be disciplined, we can manage even the political interference. Are you interfering in the process to make it better, or you want to interfere to make it worse? That's what we need to direct our attention to. And we believe that that sort of interference has not boded well for ECG over the past decades. And earlier politicians ceased to meddle in the affair of ECG unnecessarily, the better for the power sector.
Nana Amwesi, the 7th, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's a pleasure talking to you, and he is the Executive Director for Energy Securities, the Institute for Energy Securities, Nana Amwesi, the 7th day. So what do you also make of this new development, which hinges on the fact that the earlier number of containers that we were told had been missing looks as though the committee put together to investigate this has found way more than we thought we had been told earlier. So some are already praising the fact that, yes, then it means that some underhand dealings had gone on, and so it is good that we have found more. And like you just heard, Nana Mwesi, there is a possibility that there could even be more if the search is further intensified. We'll see what the coming days look like regarding this particular issue. And maybe if you also feel strongly about this story, tell us about it. What do you make of this current development so we can collectively get to the bottom of such a development that affects the country's power sector? 3FM